Elon Musk texted me yesterday saying, "Hey, Josh, Alan just told me I can't get on the show anytime soon." I said, "I'm sorry, Elon. It's our fans are saying, hey, like we tuned in for the Alan and Josh show, and now there's always a third person there. Like, what's going on?" And so we decided to, roll it back a little bit.
So today we actually wanted to go over some of the crucial strategies and things to look for when you're evaluating digital patient engagement. So really it's how to evaluate digital patient engagement from a completely unbiased perspective.
Well, it is in the sense that, one of the things that we preach here, Alan, from a business point of view is we talk about this in the sales and marketing team that we're not trying to sell like an organization on Seamless in the traditional sense. We really believe that we want to educate them and help them make the best purchase or the best buying experience for themselves, because I think we're not naive to think that we are frankly the best solution for every organization or every situation. Mm-hmm. And what we're really trying to do is figure out, like, are we actually the right fit? Mm-hmm. Because I think everyone's like lived with the experience that if you end up buying the wrong product or choosing the wrong partner, more so than a product in our case, mm-hmm. yeah, you might end up with a contract and you do that, first year together. But if it's not set up for success because it was the wrong fit in the first place, it's not going to continue. And then both sides have invested all this time and resources into a relationship that was set up for failure. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that actually is really important that you have the right, framework going into not just buying a solution, but really buying and choosing a partner more than anything. Right. And so, Alan, what's funny is that, like, we can go through this. We're going to talk, I guess, about like how we think about like how you should evaluate a digital patient engagement platform. But the other way to look at it is, if someone like an organization listens to this podcast, they might either say, "Wow, I completely agree with this framework." That might be a sign that we'd be a good partner for you. But if you listen to this and you go, whoa, like none of those things that they're talking about actually matter to me, right? Yeah, we might not be the right partner for you, and that's okay too. Mm-hmm. At least now you know, right?
Yeah. Let's dive right into it. I think, the first thing that strikes me as, very important when you're evaluating digital patient engagement technologies is the evidence. And I don't just mean the results of the technology. I mean, who's using the technology? Are there actual partners who are similar to our organization? For instance, if we're thinking of I'm a large cardiac center. Are there other cardiac centers using the technology, and what has their experience been like using the technology? Is it similar to how our organization is running? And if so, that's a pretty good indicator that this technology is going to be a good fit based on the similarities between the organizations.
Yeah, it's funny, Alex. I think when people start, a company like ours, there's this misconception that you should always, focus on trying to work with the largest brands in healthcare. And if you do that, then of course everyone else will be on board with adopting this innovation. But to your point, the truth is that everyone thinks the same way, which is, who is most like me and what are they using? So I'll give you an example, right? SeamlessMD, right? If I hear about a new technology or product, yeah, it's cool if Microsoft and Amazon are customers, but they're like, I wouldn't say they're like us at SeamlessMD. They're not that close to us. Like, I would probably pick an organization. I would want to see a reference customer that is either maybe more in healthcare, or maybe that is more of the size and stage of our company, right? To know that this solution can work for something in our category or our stage and size. And that's more relevant to us than, oh, did a big brand such as Microsoft use that product and were they successful? Now, if you're Amazon, yeah, you care if Microsoft was successful with the product. I get that, right? Yeah. And so I think to your point, we have to look at, as an individual organization, you have to say, who is like me as a hospital or health system, and what are they using? And so, like, I think that's why, in Seamless, like, we've been very intentional about, like, yeah, like, we have to make sure that we are effective as a partner for not only, the big academic brands, but also more of the community hospitals or more of the larger, multi-hospital systems. And to your point, showing that, yeah, we are successful with different specialties and clinical areas, whether it is cardiac or orthopedics or obstetrics, like showing that we can support the entire spectrum and have partners who are talking about that great success is so important.
Yeah, no, that's great. And actually that leads me into the next point in the criteria. So to your point, to start the conversation, is there an organization that's similar to mine that actually uses the technology? Great. And if so, what does that partner actually say about the technology? If it's, positive thoughts, that's even better. Then it's like, okay, now we're starting the conversation. The next criteria point in evaluating digital patient engagement would come down to outcomes that they specifically have with the product in my particular area. Will I actually get the result that I'm looking to get if I partner with this organization?
Yeah, and there's different levels of that too, right? There's like level one, which is adoption. Like, do I have 80-90% of patients actually adopting and activating on the platform and using it, which is like layer one. And then layer two is, and I think this is the more challenging thing for companies, but one thing that Sims has done really well, right? Which is, do we have actual clinical evidence around, has the product been used to reduce length of stay, readmission rates, ER visits, discharge to SNF, total cost of care? And, at this point, we probably have about 20 or so studies or evaluations done showing improvements on these metrics. And, these were not studies that we chose to do. Our partners did them, right, out of their own, intention to it, which is frankly better. It's certainly far more objective that way. But to your point, Alan, I think one of the things I've realized, having come from the clinical world myself, and now I guess I'm in the technology industry world, is it's not really that hard to create software that has features, right? Lots of people can build an application that sends reminders, that has to-do lists and educational content and monitoring dashboards and all that kind of stuff. But there's a whole science behind how do you use those components and design the user experience in a way that you can actually get behavioral change, that you can actually get an 80-year-old patient tracking a symptom, that you can actually get the right workflow for a provider to, monitor a patient and catch a readmission earlier. Those are very, very complex, challenging things. And so you want to see real data. And especially if you're an organization that's not typically, let's call it the earliest adopter, you really want that evidence to give you confidence that this team knows what they're doing.
Right. Yep. I like to always think, digital patient engagement, as much as it's a technology, it really is in the behavior change science realm. Like that really is, at the end of the day, we're engaging patients to make an empowered choice and to make an action. And so it really comes down to a behavior change. And so, yeah, first layer is, can we actually get patients using the technology? Second layer is, can we actually improve clinical outcomes? Let's say like a readmission or a length of stay. To your second point around, it's easy to build features on a technology platform, but making them usable is more important. That's kind of the next point in the criteria for evaluating digital patient engagement is, what features does the product actually have? What features does the technology have? Keeping in mind that the outcomes and the results is the most important, but let's take a look at some of the features. Do they have multilingual support? Do they have the reminders, the checklist, the surveys, the remote monitoring? Those are all features that are important for a digital patient engagement experience for a patient, and you don't necessarily have to.
Sorry to cut in, but I guess the thought that I have now that we do this for many years now, all the features that you mentioned, I think you would agree those are kind of like almost like table stakes, right? And I think what's happened now is that there are some new expectations that really should be table stakes now, right? So, really probably an even more important feature is EHR integration. Like, do you have like turnkey integrations with like Epic and Cerner, right? So Seamless, again, yeah, shameless plug, but we are on the Epic App Orchard, the Cerner code program. So that way our partners know, yeah, Seamless has been validated by Epic and Cerner to have successful integrations. Other partners have used those integrations. They're turnkey, they're fast, they work. That matters, to IT. It matters to administrators. They want to know that this platform can fit their broader IT strategy and vision.
Right.
So I would say in 2021, even more so than those features are like the integration features. And I think the other piece too, and I know you're getting this, Al, is that a big part of the product and the feature set is the clinical side, the clinical content, the digital care plan. So maybe I'll let you talk a bit about those, but I think that that's almost like going to be table stakes soon as well in our space.
Yeah, absolutely. So just one last thing I wanted to say about features. A lot of organizations come at the conversation from a features perspective. So they're thinking, hey, wouldn't it be great if, it's COVID times now, we need video visits. So I want to make sure that the product has video visits and things like that. While it's super important and it makes a lot of sense, is not necessarily looking at the holistic picture of digital patient engagement. And not to say, like, obviously, SeamlessMD has video visits, and there's other video platforms like Zoom that integrate into SeamlessMD and things like that. But I think to look at it from a features only perspective is missing the bigger picture of what is the result that we're actually looking to achieve with our patient population and our provider population as well. We want.
Sorry, sorry, I don't want to jump in, but like you remember a really great point. And I can tell you, because like if you're thinking about if you're an organization, let's say you are a clinical leader or administrative leader, and you want to bring something like SeamlessMD or another technology in, and you have to get executive sponsor support. You have to get this VP or this CXO at the exec level on board because they have to ultimately pay for it and be a sponsor to it and all that. I can tell you where often like it falls on deaf ears is like, okay, because you might want a patient engagement platform or some technology, but if you're the executive, you're just thinking about an outcome. You're thinking about a result, and you're just thinking about, okay, well, like, how will this get me to the result? Is there proof that they can get me to this outcome? And it reminds me of, Alan, like when I internally in our company, right, a couple of years ago, our customer success team was, looking at different customer success software that could be purchased, right? And I think our team internally, they had, I think, looked at like a few, vendors or demos, and I didn't even know that they were doing this, right? But they were looking at a couple of vendors, and then they picked one they liked, and then they brought one vendor to me to talk about and say, hey, they said,
here's
hey,
all
Josh,
the features.
they said, hey, Josh, here's the feature matrix. Look at all the features, right? And like, this is why we think this one's the best. And I'm just sitting there thinking, okay, but like, as a CEO, I actually don't care about the features. Right. I care about how does this move our organization forward?
Right.
How is it going to actually improve these key metrics? Like that's the pitch I care about.
Right. And not to say like the features don't add up to that outcome. You need the features to actually get the outcome, but the outcome is the most important thing. In
100%.
That. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But, and I get that when we're in the weeds of our own department, those features matter because like you're the one using those features day to day. Your patients are using those features today. So they do matter. But then ultimately, when you're trying to get broader support in the organization, people at the administrative level are going to care about the result. Right. And so like the point is that they all matter. But I think what you and I find sometimes is that there's almost too much emphasis on feature parity and not as much emphasis on like, okay, like, are we going to get the results that matter?
Right.
Has this partner proven they can generate outcomes in partnership with partners similar to me? I think that should be an overriding factor. Yeah. Not always the case though.
Right. So now taking on to the earlier point that you made about the clinical expertise and actually infusing more of the clinical perspective into the product. I think this is a very understated point when evaluating digital patient engagement, but this really can make or break the results and the outcomes of using a digital patient engagement platform. And so the evaluation criteria that I would say here is the team composition. So actually taking a look at what am I getting with this product? It's not just a technology that I get and plug and play and it's, you get the technology and you run with it. It's what other professional services are being offered to the organization as almost like an extension of our team. If I want a certain clinical pathway, is this being developed by a bunch of engineers, or is this actually going to be developed by clinicians? Is this going to be developed with plain language and patient accessibility in mind? And so one thing that I'll mention about SeamlessMD's team, at least, about 25% of our team is clinical. They really understand what needs to go into a digital program to make it accessible for a patient to actually understand the information that they're trying to educate patients on.
Yeah, and Alan, just to be clear to listeners, when Alan's saying like clinical, he actually you do mean clinical. Like our team is made of people who've come from, like they're pharmacists or they're dietitians or they're nurses or they're other types of trained clinicians. And these clinicians, not only develop our, template digital care plans for heart surgery, knee replacement, maternity care, whatever that comes out of the box, they actually work hand in hand with our healthcare system partners to help, further configure those workflows or the protocols to kind of satisfy the vision of our healthcare partners. But the point is that like you have people like you working with you who actually have been there, who get it, who have served patients the way you serve patients, which is very different than I think a lot of companies who they might hire a physician consultant to create templates, and then you end up working with someone who's not at all clinical to try and make this work, who doesn't have the same experience that you've had, working with patients. And I think we found that that's made a big difference in the quality of our digital care plans and the quality of the final product with customers. I don't know how else to attribute, I love the success that we've had from an outcomes point of view. I think that the team composition, to your point, has made a huge difference in that.
Yep. It's not just throwing tech at a problem. It's throwing really intentional tech at a problem. It's throwing a really well-designed, clinically thought out program that's delivered through tech at a problem to solve the problem.
Yeah, it's kind of like if you were a health system and you decide to pivot to becoming a digital patient engagement company with your team composition, it would be SeamlessMD.
Right.
Like, and that's the point. We know you can't do that because your core product as a health system is direct patient care, right? But imagine you could pivot and like go 24/7 to be a digital patient engagement company. It basically would be SeamlessMD to some extent, or more so, frankly, than most other, I think, companies in the overall healthcare space that are very engineering tech heavy.
Right. The next point on this evaluation criteria for digital patient engagement comes down to accessibility of the product. And this is relating back to the, achieving results, the first layer. How do you get that engagement? How do you get patients actually enrolled in using the program? A lot of that comes down to accessibility. So making sure that the digital patient engagement platform that you're bringing into the system actually has accessibility that's top of mind, and everything is built around accessibility, making sure that it's engaging for the patient. And that means, multi-device. It's meeting the patient where they're at on any device that they have. So whether it's a web browser, whether it's a phone app or a tablet or computer, it doesn't matter. So making sure that it's multi-device or multi-platform. I don't know the word for that, but you know what I'm saying.
Yeah, I know what you're saying.
And also with accessibility comes down to, again, the quality of the content that goes into the system. So things like plain language, things like making sure the education has illustrations with it and it's written at a grade 6 or below reading level. All of these different combinations of accessibility put into the content in the program. So again, like the empowering tone, it's not written at a grade 12 level where, nobody can understand the content on the platform. It's written for the patient. It's written as an empowering voice for the patient to actually take action in their own life and become a participant in their care, really be a partner in their care and in their journey.
Absolutely. And I think that actually, segues well, Alan, to services. So I think one of the things that we're big on at Seamless is the fact that we'll tell our partners, hey, we're not just a technology company, we're a full partnership, meaning that you get a whole team assigned to you during the implementation, but also for the ongoing partnership, you have a whole team assigned to you to support with, troubleshooting issues, driving up patient adoption, sharing best practices across our customer partner network, helping with data reports and analytics, and stakeholder engagement and training of staff and all these kinds of things. And I think that plays a critical role because you mentioned it earlier, the outcome is not just the technology, it's a technology plus the quality of implementation and ongoing execution.
Right.
And so having a partner who like knows what they're doing because of their experience and and access to partners to share best practices. I think that's a critical part of a good partner. And I think it comes back to that whole concept where you're not just buying a product. I think if you were a, department and you're just deciding, okay, like which like, $10 a month, like file storage product am I going to use to upload my 1 gigabyte of like Word documents? Yeah, you don't really need a partner for that. You just need like a, take your pick, Dropbox, Box, Google Drive, OneDrive, like whatever, right? But if you're talking about, hey, like I actually want to drive an outcome across a large patient population, especially patients who are typically 60 to 80. Okay, yeah, you need a good product, but you need an exceptional partner.
Right. Yeah. So, and again, it's like, look to experience, look to the actual network that technology partner has. And I think that it's such an understated point, but delivering those best practices from the network is that ongoing partnership is evolving over time. It's a constantly shifting entity, really, because the technology partner is learning from all of the different partners in the network. And then you as an organization are going to get those best practices. You're going to get the latest and greatest updates that's been made to the platform, and updates that have been made to the implementation, the best practices for implementation, the best practices for ongoing engagement, and making sure that patients are using it. So all of that is kind of really important in evaluating a digital patient engagement platform, is above and beyond the technology. What am I getting in terms of professional services, and in terms of an extension of my team? Do they actually help in that way? Another point for the evaluating digital patient engagement.
Wait, sorry, Al, do you mind me to add one more thing to that,
please,
topic around kind of services and partnership? People often ask, well, how do you know that the services are good, right? And the way that I look at it is number one, I mean, go back to the outcomes. So if someone has a lot of great reference partners who either have great case studies, stories, strong reference calls, you end up doing those, okay, that gives you some data. But the second thing I look at is, okay, when you're talking to that partner, like during the exploration process, and you're asking them these questions about like, how do you get patients adopting this, right? How do you make this fit into my team's clinical workflow? What is the quality of answers you're getting? Like, do you feel like you're actually learning something from this potential partner? Like, do you feel like you're getting smarter about patient engagement based on what they're telling you? Do you feel like they're actually giving you really like clear, comprehensive, sensible answers to like, hey, here's how we've made this work for our partners?
Maybe with examples.
Yes, great. If the answer is like, wait, I'm not really learning anything new, like their stuff doesn't make sense, it doesn't seem they've really done this before, right? Which is the truth for a lot of companies in our space that like don't really have the experience, because they're still starting out, and that might be okay if you're okay with that, but you kind of you get what you pay for, basically. Like that tells you too, right? So there's lots of these data points that you can get along the way to figure out, okay, like is this the right partner that has experience that I need to be successful? Because what you don't want is you buy a great product and then the execution is poor because the team doesn't know what they're doing, and then you have to report back on that. That's a bad outcome for you too, as an organization or as a department that's leading this. You got to think about that.
And hopefully it's pretty upfront when you're in that exploratory phase. Hopefully the company that you're dealing with is actually quite upfront with their information like that. But if they're not, just ask questions. It's going to serve you better in the end if you're asking the right questions and you want to dig deeper into like, what is that actual process look like? Ask those questions. And if they kind of run out of their canned answers and they can't actually come up with a good explanation, there's your answer. So great point.
And another thing to add, Alan, is like the person you're talking to might not know everything, but then the question is, okay, but can they bring someone in who's more of an expert? So like, I get that the sales team member is not going to necessarily be the Epic integration expert, but can they bring in the IT person who is? Right. If they can't even do that, if you can't even do that, then I'll say this: like there are a lot of companies that will put on their webpage, we integrate with Epic and certain all these things. But the moment you end up having a conversation with them, it's like,
we can do it. We just have it. Or, yeah, exactly.
And by the way, yeah, not, I mean, even when we were early on, we didn't have those integrations done, right? But that's the point. Then like maybe at that time we weren't the right fit for some organizations where they
Right.
needed it away, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. Ask the questions, and then
Yeah.
you got to make a good judgment there.
Right. We were also transparent about that back in those days when we didn't have integrations and such. We were pretty transparent about it. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, we've been in the early startup phase
Yeah.
too. So like, I mean, I definitely don't want to tell an organization, hey, like
Right.
you shouldn't work with a very early stage company. You should sometimes. Like we've been there, and we're grateful for our partners who bet on us. But I think you just have to be sensible about like
what it is that
what
you're
are the pros and cons of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
The pros are maybe it's cheaper because they're earlier stage. There's more risk there. They don't really, you're kind of helping them figure out what they're doing, right? More than they're helping you figure out how to do this, right? And so, yeah, you're paying them less, but then there is higher risk and you have more skin in the game. On the plus side, it is maybe it's significantly cheaper than a proven solution, and maybe you get to shape more of the vision for where this product could go. Whereas if it's a more established company, a lot of that has been figured out. So it's not necessarily bad to work with an early stage company.
Pros and cons for sure.
Pros and cons, but then also it's probably slower because they don't have a proven playbook for this.
Yeah.
Right. It's going to take longer to implement. It's going to take longer to figure out is it successful. But maybe you're cool with that if you like that early stage experience with a startup and
Yeah.
Sorry, Alan, I derailed. I think you were going to a different topic and I just derailed.
No, that's great. So the next point in evaluating digital patient engagement comes down to stakeholder involvement. So who from let's say it's a health system or a hospital, who from that organization is actually needed to implement the product, to use the product, to actually make it, come to fruition? Who's actually involved in that process? Do I need to hire a bunch of FTEs to actually manage the program? Do I need to have all of my clinical team weigh in on the decision and the content that goes into the system, or even build the content? Do I need a bunch of Epic trained project managers to actually make the implementation happen, or design the workflows for the product? All of this is really important in evaluating the digital patient engagement platform. Who do I need to be involved in the process, from maybe evaluating the product, but then also implementing the product and using the product? Very, very important.
Yeah, and it's one of those things where when you're first evaluating solutions, I don't think you necessarily have to get everyone in the room right away. You probably want to pre-vet certain things, but to your point, Alan, you kind of want to figure out, okay, like if this goes somewhere, do I know everyone that I need to bring into the conversation? And then also, you have to be honest about, well, like how do I weight that feedback? Because if there's certain people this will affect more, then maybe their opinion should matter more in the conversations in the process. If there's someone who's kind of more like peripherally affected, then like, yeah, you want them to be in the know, but you maybe like they won't care to be as involved, and you don't care for them to be as involved. What you don't want to do is not involve everyone you should, and then bring them in too late or not at all. Because let's say you go ahead and you buy something, and then someone really important, finds out afterwards, and you're asking them to be part of the implementation, and they're a little bit upset that they weren't asked to be involved. Even if they would have chosen the same partner you did, the fact that they didn't get a chance to weigh in and ask their questions and give their opinion, even if they disagreed with you, that can affect their buy-in to make the project successful. It's like, imagine, Alan, like if we were choosing a marketing solution and you would have to be, implementing it and using it, and I didn't involve
maybe I'm using it. Yeah, exactly.
And it's like, maybe you would have totally agreed on the choice,
right?
But it's the fact that you weren't involved. It's like what the heck? Like, I'm having to use this all the time, and why wasn't I?
I think at the end of the day, like, an emotional response to certain things is valid. We're humans that work for the organization. So it's not like, if I don't consult somebody who's actually important, who's going to be an end user, who's going to be, involved in the product in some capacity, if I don't consult with them on the decision, they're going to feel pretty slighted over the fact that, you know, we've brought in this technology and we didn't consult you on it, and now you have to go use it. Like, that's, you know, at the end of the day, we're human. That's going to hurt feelings. It's going to impact the relationship. It's going to maybe burn bridges internally. And that's something that you don't want to do. You want to use, especially with something like digital patient engagement, which does affect multiple stakeholders, and it's for the patient. Like, you want it to bring people together. You want it to really, you know, have everybody kind of rallied behind the same solution. So that's definitely a great point. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think, you know, like, let's say you have a potential partner who's interested in your technology, and let's say they're, I don't know, they're very senior, they're the chief of the department,
Mhm.
and they say, you know what, Alan, no, we don't have to show the other, you know, clinicians in my department. Let's just go talk to the C-suite, and we'll get this approved. A less experienced company might say, oh wow, great, we can avoid this,
Whole
like, 5
conversation.
additional stakeholders in this
Yeah.
process, and go straight to
Yeah.
the top.
Right.
But I think an more experienced company like ourselves we tell that person, well, hold on.
Mhm.
Honestly, in our experience, it's probably better if we, you know, present to the whole department first and get their buy-in and answer their
Yeah.
questions, because, you know, number one, like, your executives are probably going to ask you, did you get department buy-in?
Mhm.
And even if they don't, even if they just go ahead and sign off on this, when your department's implementing this,
Yeah.
they're going to say, we weren't involved in this, and it's going to
Right.
create that tension that we talked about, and that friction. It's going to make the initiative less successful, probably. So even though you could argue, yeah, we're you know, as a company, we're actually reducing the success of this deal closing because we're
Yep.
asking you to involve more of the department, but we want to do that because we want you to be successful with us.
Right.
And so we're going to intentionally add risk to the deal because we're thinking about the long-term partnership with you, right? I would rather us put some risk on the deal happening, knowing that if it does happen, you're gonna be a winner with us,
Right.
as a department, as an organization, because, you know, we think very long-term in this company, and frankly, we're very customer-centric. We want the organization to be successful with us. So we'll add more risk early on if that actually, frankly, protects you as the partner.
Yep.
It's better for us long-term too.
Yeah, that's a great point. The next point for evaluating digital patient engagement comes down to, and this is very similar to the stakeholder involvement, but the workflow integration. So how is it actually going to be used day to day? Who is involved in that? Who's actually the end user that's using the product? And then also, how does it integrate into our current workflow and the workflow that we're trying to achieve as well? So the point here being workflow integration. Who needs to be trained on the product? Who's actually enrolling the patient? Who's going to be using the product? Who's going to be maybe receiving reports of the product? And how well does that actually integrate into our situation? If there's, you know, maybe one front office staff member, maybe one PA versus an organization who has 10 PAs and lots of resources at play, how does that digital patient engagement product or platform integrate into that workflow? And does it change based on the number of resources that I have at my disposal?
It's a fantastic point, Alan. And I think, you know, I don't think there's like a perfect, you know, way to do workflows with an organization. But I think the key is what you said, which is, does it fit my workflow as an organization?
Yeah.
So for example, you know, there are remote patient monitoring companies out there, or digital engagement companies out there, where they enable remote monitoring of patients and alerts and dashboards for providers to monitor patients, but that's all they do, meaning that you actually need a nurse or another provider on the other end to be monitoring patients to use this product.
Yep.
And that doesn't work for every organization, right? And so, like, the way that we've designed Seamless, as you know, is we've made it possible to have flexibility in that. So we have some partners that use Seamless purely for self-management, because we have a system set up so that way, if they don't want to monitor patients, patients can be given, you know, self-care education on how to manage issues like constipation, or the patient can be told, hey, you have this, you know, yellow flag because your incision has pus coming out of it. You have to call this number and be proactive, you know, and no one's on the other end looking at this data. But then at the same time, we have other features for providers who actually want alerts and want dashboards and want to monitor patients, and they want patients knowing that they're going to be monitoring them, you know, X hours per day, whatever that is. But the point is that, you know, they have to figure out, okay, can this company and this platform actually support my specific workflow?
Right.
And if it doesn't matter how good the product is,
Mhm.
it's not going to work here.
Yeah.
And so you actually want to know, like, does this company care about that?
Mhm.
Right? Are they actually a partner on this?
Yeah.
Can they adapt to my workflow?
Yeah.
Not every company can.
Right. Yeah. I think adapting is a key point there. Are they flexible with my workflow that we are set up for? Can they actually accommodate that? And if it's a one size fits all, it's likely not going to be that circumstance. It's not going to be that flexible in terms of the product.
And this is why the department stakeholder engagement is important, right? You can have one physician thinking, of course we're going to monitor patients, but then if you start asking the other physicians or nurses, they'll tell you actually
we're at 100% right now.
Yeah. Or sometimes we have the opposite, where the physician thinks, oh, no one's going to monitor patients, but then the moment that we talk to the other physicians or nurses, they go, oh, no, like we would.
Yeah.
Like, we're calling patients every day. I'd rather use SeamlessMD.
Exactly.
And the physician says, oh, I didn't realize that. This is even more valuable now. So that's kind of the other benefit of engaging, a couple more of the stakeholders, is that you actually get a more complete picture of, like, how does this fit the workflow? Where is the value? And you only learn that through more conversation.
Yep. Great points. The next criteria for evaluating digital patient engagement comes down to the actual specialties or customizations of the product that is already made into a template, let's call it. So obviously the goal of a patient engagement platform is to have it specific to your patient population. It's not going to be, necessarily a one size fits all, but having the benefit of a template where the company or the product has already done it in the past with another, hopefully similar organization, similar specialty or similar space that we're trying to implement for. If they have those templates available, it saves everyone time. You can implement the product faster and you can get those results faster. And so just looking at what are the specialties that are available, what are the templates that are available, that should be on your evaluation criteria.
Yeah, and my take too is that, like, every company at some point, you're gonna, like, you might be their first partner for a new specialty or use case, and like that's okay too. You just have to be sure about your trade-offs there, right? So it's like, hey, maybe it's really important to you that they've done orthopedics before, but it's okay to you that you might be their first partner for, I don't know, urology or something. That's okay too. You just have to be okay with the trade-off, right? And just be confident that they have enough experience in maybe some of the other ones that matter to you, that you're pretty confident that, yeah, you're the first partner for something else, that they can do it. Because the truth is that healthcare is so complex that it can take a while for someone to have covered every possible outlier or edge case or like this like really rare condition. I mean, but at the end of the day, like it's about the process and the platform. And most things are repeatable in other areas for the most part. But certainly early on in the company's life cycle, then yeah, you want to be aware of like how much or how little experience that they have.
Right. Yeah, and I think your point about the process is really, really important there. So do they have an established process where they've built it for maybe other use cases or specialties, and are they able to repeat that then for, let's say it's a use case where there's no product on the market that has this, that's actually built it. Can I trust this company to actually go ahead and pioneer that with me?
Oh, I mean, and this is why, like, I think that matters even more than, frankly, how many templates you have, because anyone can create templates of stuff, right? Like, I could frankly build for you a platform that has low patient usage, low engagement, doesn't drive an outcome. I can create,
but I have the template
for you. I can cover every use case, especially for you. Doesn't work though, because like it's a poor product, but I can create the templates for you, right? I personally, as an organization, I'd rather partner with a company that doesn't have all the templates, but the templates they do have work.
Yeah.
And I know that the next time they enter that new use case, it's going to work.
Right.
That's what I would bet on if I'm a partner.
That's a great point. Yeah. And I think that's intentionally why we've saved this point in the criteria for a little bit later down or further down the list in terms of the importance in evaluating digital patient engagement. The next point, and this obviously is dependent on your organization, but price needs to be considered. If we're evaluating a digital patient engagement platform, we need to take into account how much does it actually cost. And price is a tricky one because it's sometimes not very clear in terms of the pricing structure. So is there a setup fee? Okay. Is there a licensing fee? Is there an ongoing cost? Are there update costs? There's all these different factors that play into price. And so if you can get a clear understanding of what is the price, that's a pretty good sign. If you can understand what the price breakdown is, how much it's actually going to cost me in terms of actual money, but then also time needed to implement something, that should all be factored into price.
Yeah, I think, and the only caveat I give, and I think I've learned this having been on the other end, is that especially, in healthcare, when you're selling software to enterprises, which are complex organizations, it's not like you're going to a shoe store and you're buying a shoe, or going to the grocery store where it's frankly, it's a commodity. Everything is pretty much the same.
Mm-hmm.
You can just pick it up and start using it. When you're selling like complex software that integrates with EHRs and touches like all these stakeholders, I can appreciate now on the business side why it's important to, hey, I actually want you to actually understand what we do, so that if we're giving you a proposal with our pricing model, that it's actually reflective of a true understanding of what you're getting out of this. Because it's kind of like, a good example is, I don't know, like CRMs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Salesforce costs a lot more than some other, CRM products, but it's probably because they're more sophisticated. They have more use cases. They have a bigger ecosystem of integrations. They have, a more proven, process and playbook. And so, yeah, it costs more, but that it might not actually cost more ultimately, depending on what outcome you're looking for to achieve, right? But unless you actually sat through understanding what they offer versus someone else, then you're getting a number that doesn't have context.
Right.
And probably the best example of that is, like when you're starting off as a company, and I kind of alluded to this earlier, it's like, yeah, like you might give it away for cheap or free to your first few partners. And as an organization, you're like, oh, it's free.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's not actually free in terms of what we call the total cost of ownership, right? So if I'm an organization and yeah, this product is free or it costs less, but it's unproven, I'm like one of the first like guinea pigs for it. I'm having to help Alan figure out how to educate a staff on this, how to get adoption, what the playbook is. That's your time.
Right.
And then that's your risk of not getting a good outcome. And so was it free? Maybe according to your balance sheet, it was free, but based on the time you spent on it and the high likelihood that it won't work out, that has a cost attached to it.
Yeah.
And so that, I think that's the way like I've come to look at it now, even as a business owner. Like free is usually not truly free.
Right.
Especially in the context of if you're buying like software for an enterprise.
Right. Definitely.
I agree with you. Like you want directness from whoever you're talking to, but then you also have to appreciate the fact that like there's nuance and context.
Right. Very important. Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing I'll comment on, I think what I find interesting, Alan, is that like depending on who you're talking to, what's expensive for one party is not expensive for another. Right. So like if you are selling a hospital EMR system, right, and you told those numbers to an individual clinician,
right,
they're like, no one's ever going to buy that.
Right.
And then you find out that your hospital bought the EHR for like hundreds of millions of dollars. Right. So it's like, I think that matters too. It's like, does the ultimate decision maker, how do they view the ROI on that? And people often are surprised.
Yeah.
Right. I'll give you a good example, Alan. Right. So like recruiting firms, right? If you're hiring a recruiting firm to help you find someone for a role in a company, right? It can cost like 10,000, 15, 20, even more than that as you get to more and more senior hires for hire. And someone might say, whoa, like that's a lot of money to hire someone, right? But if you're like a business owner, right? And you're like, well, if I find the right person for this role, and I think about how much time would I have otherwise spent months trying to find this like perfect person for the role, like 10, 20, whatever $1,000, or maybe like a lot more for like a major executive. If that one person can bring in 10 or 20 or 30K of value in their first year, because maybe they, that salesperson was just that much better and brought in like one extra deal, whatever it is, it that pays for itself. The time that you don't spend trying to like find that right person, that could have, like, if you spend like a month or two, whatever, trying to find that person, now you don't have to, pays for itself. So people don't realize this, but when you look at it from like the opportunity ROI, cost, it really adds up, right? That's the other way to look at it too. It's like, it sounds like a big number, but then like, what's your alternative? And then it's like, oh, it's a big number, but relative to what else I have to do, like, pays for itself,
Yep, totally. Well, and I think it comes back to, again, like, are we looking at features and the cost for those features, or are we looking at the outcomes? Are we looking at the results? Are we looking at the holistic experience of the product as well? And that all factors into the price. So what, like you said, there's nuances behind the price, there's context that matters, and who's the person viewing the price, that also matters, because their opportunity that they're looking at might be different than just looking at the features. Hey, I want this feature. Oh, it's that much, or that little, whatever it is. But
I mean, Al, I guarantee you, right? Like if someone on our team, like Yolanda, like in HR operations here, right? Like I can tell you that maybe if we weren't working with recruiting firms yet, and she had heard about one, she would probably have assumed initially, like before we started working with recruiters like years ago, she'd probably been like, oh,
too expensive.
If I told Josh it would cost this much money for a recruiter, like, he for sure would say no. But if she actually had talked to me about it, I would have been like, if you do the math, kind of makes sense. I can see why it works out, right? It's the same thing in an organization, right? Like if you don't have that conversation with the executive sponsor, you kind of assume like, oh, like, why would they allocate funding for this new initiative, right? But if you talk to them and you explain the situation, you're like, hey, like, this could cut like this day by a day, or readmissions, or improve patient satisfaction. And they go, Dr. Sardana, I did the math. This is like a really good ROI. And they're like, whoa.
Or to them, maybe they're even thinking about like market share and how could this actually help us increase market share? Well, it's this innovation, patients actually want this experience. It's multifactorial, definitely.
Yeah, I'm always like, the more that I've been in this industry, the more you realize that, like, when you actually get to the executive sponsors, when the value is there, it's frontline providers are surprised at how quickly they can move, and how, like, to your point, like, they have a broader ROI that they look at. And so I've been pleasantly surprised, actually.
Yeah. Another point to evaluating digital patient engagement is security of the product. I mean, we should have mentioned this probably earlier in the conversation, earlier on the criteria list, but if they don't have the proper security, it's not even worth having the conversation. So that, again, it's table stakes. But looking at, are they HIPAA compliant, or in Canada, are they PHIPA compliant, and other factors go into it. When you're looking at the EMR integrations, for instance, obviously if they are in the Epic App Orchard and Cerner code program, they've obviously hit those security requirements, and hopefully, if they have other health system partners who are reputable academic medical centers, for instance, they have those security requirements. But security is a huge factor that should go into the evaluation as well.
Absolutely, no question. Table stakes at this point, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any other points for the evaluation, or?
I mean, maybe the last one, Alan, and this is a bit like, what's the right word? Wishy-washy, but I, in many ways, like, I think to some extent, culture fit between your partner and the organization does matter. And some people would disagree with this and say, well, Josh, like, just because they didn't like you in the the buying process doesn't mean that they shouldn't buy your solution. But let's be honest, like, people buy stuff from people they get along with, right? And the culture that you get, like, let's be fair, like, people might assume, well, just because the sales team is this way, they're obviously incentivized to get sales. Maybe the rest of the team, has a different culture. So if I didn't like the sales team, maybe I will like the professional services team and the customer success team and all that kind of stuff. Maybe.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I think culture, goes across an organization, right?
Yeah.
So,
well, and I think I think there are real values behind that as well. Like if the company has integrity, you want to work with that company. If they're going to do something unethical during, let's say, even the sales process, what are they going to do when they have patients actually using the product, right? Like, so I think certain values go a long way, and that values kind of add up to the culture as well, and the culture fit between organizations. So I think it's a very valid point.
Absolutely. And again, like, I think most people do that anyways, right? Most people, frankly, buy things from people that they like. I think that happens a lot too. But my hope is that if you like the people that you're buying from, because that culture persists in the organization, you'll like the rest of the team too. And I can say, probably everyone does it anyways that way. It doesn't matter.
Right. Yeah. Well, and it's interesting as well from the vendor's perspective, the partners who, and I'm strictly speaking from SeamlessMD's perspective, but the partners who we have all hold those same values. And it's just very interesting to see how they are exactly the kind of people we would want to work with. And that's just who happens to, maybe every hospital, every health system out there is the same, and they're all just like so great like that. But I've just noticed, especially with our partners, they are definitely those high integrity individuals. They are very much patient centered, and that just seems to be who we're attracting as well, and who is interested in working with SeamlessMD as well.
Yeah, and to your point, I think if you're in healthcare, you're in it because, like, for the most part, you're well intentioned. You want to make a difference, and there's all those folks everywhere across the board. And I think, to your point, Alan, like, I think most people do appreciate, like you've said, a company that has integrity, that has a high standard for excellence, right? That really puts its customers and its patients first, before the business. I just think that resonates with most organizations.
Right. Yeah. So, Josh, that's all the evaluation criteria points that I had on my
list. It sounds like an evaluation might take 12 months, given everything. No, I'm just kidding.
But honestly, I feel like, there are definitely some that we mentioned are more like table stakes. And so you can probably weed out a lot of different companies just based on those table stakes alone. And then beyond that, that's where it gets into some of the nuances. But I think a good point to start with is who's using the product already? What do they say about the product? What's the experience been like from a results perspective, an outcomes perspective? And then beyond that, what are the additional services that they're offering? Is it an extension of our team? Do they actually have clinical expertise? Is that being added? And all of that should go into the decision when you're looking at digital patient engagement. And then obviously, like we mentioned, security and EMR integration, workflow integration, stakeholder involvement, all of that should be considered, and is definitely important in the decision.
Yeah, and I think just one more I'd emphasize, Alan, is like, are they a true partner? And does that partnership start during the evaluation process? Right. Like, are they actually trying to partner with you and help you make the best decision for your organization?
Yep.
Because if they genuinely are, and that's something that we really, endorse and push here at SeamlessMD, whether we're the right product or not, we want you to have the best outcome. Maybe that's not with us, right? And that's fine too.
Yep.
But if they are truly a partner with you in the exploration process, then you can expect they'll be a partner with you once you formalize a partnership. But if they're not a partner with you in the buying process, you don't know if they're actually going to be a good partner for you if you decide to buy them.
Right.
And so I think that's a really important lens to look at this process with. It's like, do you feel like they're actually trying to help you?
Right.
And if they're not, red flags to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I'll tell you, just to maybe, I know we're going to wrap up, Alan, but I recently had to get I'm not call it a vendor, but I had to become a customer of another company for our business last year. And when I was on the call with the salesperson, one of the things I asked him was, but technically speaking, I could do this process on my own.
Mhm.
And, I actually wouldn't need to have a vendor like yourself do this. Like I told him, like, at first I thought maybe I would have to have you do this,
Mhm.
like for legal or other reasons. But it sounds like you're telling me that that's actually not true. And I could technically do this on our own without paying a vendor to do this.
Right.
And a big reason why I ended up actually buying from them was because they were completely transparent. They said, yeah, honestly, Josh,
Yeah.
you technically don't need to work with us or another vendor. And like, here's why, like you wouldn't have to.
Right.
But like, here are the reasons why you might want to. And if you fall into one of these buckets, like you should consider working with someone like us. But yeah, you're totally right, Josh. You don't have to work with us or anyone else. You could do it on your own. Here's what that would look like.
Right.
And all he did was educate me.
Mhm.
I ended up buying from him.
Yeah.
Not right away. I bought like months later. Right. It wasn't the right time.
Right.
But like I was treated well. I was treated like a partner.
Mhm.
And that's why I ended up buying from them.
Right. Yeah.
Left a
Well,
mark.
I think as well, because it is the year 2021, information is available. Everybody has access to the same information. If not, then maybe you're withholding information. That's a whole different conversation. But everybody should have access to relatively the same information. So it really comes down to, like you said at the beginning of the conversation, and what you just said right there, is the education. Are they actually wanting to be involved in helping you make a decision and educating you, and really weeding out, is this the right fit or not, and being quite upfront and transparent about that. I think are all very important, especially in today's age where you can get everything online. You can find out everything you need to find out.
Absolutely.
Amazing. So I think we'll end it there. We don't need to belabor the point, but I think what might be useful is if we, come up with an overall checklist that you can just take away. And so I'll link something in the show notes that's similar to that, or to that effect.
Does the checklist just say listen to the podcast?
Yeah, exactly. Checkbox number 1, listen to the podcast. Number 2, what is the price? Like, that's it. Yeah. No, but I think if I break this down for folks, if you found this episode, both educational and maybe entertaining, who knows, that's a good sign. So that's a good thing. Make sure you do your due diligence when you're looking into a product, especially something, and this is like literally everybody knows this who's evaluating digital patient engagement, but this is a product that's actually going to be impacting patients. So make sure that you do your due diligence there. I'd hate for folks to get burned. So this is our criteria. This is basically how we would go about evaluating a virtual care type technology, or digital patient engagement in this case. And hopefully that you found that valuable as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Alan.
Thanks, Josh. See you next time.
See ya.